Welcome to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And we've got our annual Giants Biggest Area for Improvements episode. I'm very excited about this one. So we each pick one offense and one defense that we deep dive into a little bit. Mine are obvious, but I went back and watched film on my defensive one, which is like stopping the run versus gap run teams. And then on the offense, creating explosives. But I think what's more interesting than just pointing out that, like, obviously you need to get better in those two areas is how the Giants can get better in those areas. Justin, how are you?
Bobby Skinner. Hi, how are you? I really like episodes like this because we come at it from two different perspectives. You spent the day watching film. I spent the day on various sites, Football Outsiders, Pro Football Reference, StatHead, Next Gen Stats, and things like that. So we spent our days in very different areas, but we're going to come together and talk about how our New York Football Giants can improve as a football team. So I did not go to New Hampshire. It rained out. It rained in Charlotte. So I have this theory that this is the karma that I'm like paying for it right now. You don't like that, by the way. I know you, witchcraft. Because I begged for it to rain in Dover for the NASCAR race so I can go to it on Monday, since we were recording our draft recap pod on Sunday. So I hoped for people's misfortune in April, so now I'm paying for it, and I didn't get to see the Charlotte race, and I didn't get to see the NHRA race in New England. So I think I'm done, though. I paid for my sins.
Yeah, hopefully you did, because we're announcing our tailgate game, or the game I'm going to come up to New Jersey. So big major announcement on this podcast. Definitely
Can we do it now?
Big announcement.
Now? Right now.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. November 26th, the return of Joe Judge. We're going to be doing laps in the parking lot. No, we won't do that. Might do like a fake video of like 2 seconds. I might just do it just to like suck it.
Yep.
But November 26th, it is the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I tried to get it a more reasonable date. There just isn't. Like Monday Night Football does not work for us to do that. There was no reasonable game in November or December that made sense. Other games, it's like you have plans. So November 26th, hosting Joe Judge and the New England Patriots, and I think we're going to win. I'm undefeated at Giants games I attended, is going to be our free tailgate this year.
Yeah, we'll be doing a bunch of other tailgates too, throughout the year, except that one, that is the game that Bobby will be at. That is the home game that Bobby will be at. So mark your calendars then, and there will be food, and it will be free. So what's that game? Tell me the date again.
November 26th, Sunday after Thanksgiving, hosting the New England Patriots. Joe Judge's return to the New York Giants. And you know me, I'm like nerdy about like, since we've done the show, it's like little moments. It's like, hey, we spent 2 years covering this guy. It'd be kind of cool to like, hey, I was at the game that he returned for, and then Brian Dable became a Super Bowl winning head coach of the Giants after that.
Wow, look at that. We also have 2 other announcements.
We do.
I'll share it.
Are you talking about the watch party games?
Yes.
Wait on those, because I'm not. Let's turn that into another announcement.
Teaser.
Because I didn't even know if we locked them in. Did we lock them in?
I can lock it in right now by saying it.
Okay, yeah, say it.
Okay, I'm going to say it. I don't have the dates in front of me. You do. That's your job. We will be having 2 watch-along parties, like we did at Mr. Purple, and then like we did for that other game that I don't want to talk about. But like we did for Mr. Purple, except we're going to run it back during the regular season. Our first watch-along game will be Sunday Night Football against the Bills.
October 15th.
October 15th. And then the second game will be against the Raiders. That's it. What's the date
5th.
of that? November 5th.
November 5th. I wasn't ready to lock this in. I thought we were going to talk about more, but hey, we're locking it in. So
we're locking it in.
Locked in. Lock it up. Lock it up. So yeah, we got some announcements. Come see us. Come hang out with us. Should be a good time. Obviously, the Patriots game is just show up. The other one, you have to buy tickets. So you got a lot of time before those become available. All right, Justin, before we get into these areas for improvement, this episode is brought to you by a couple special people. Ryan Flanagan, he's wearing flannels even though it's still hot out. And then Jeremy, Espinal. I think I announced his name twice, but it's so freaking nice. Justin, who are these people?
So freaking nice. Like when you go to patreon.com/talkinggiants, you'll feel nice, and you're a nice person if you do. Because for $2 a month plus some other tiers to get to hang out with us live while we record the shows, Bobby Skinner will send you some stickers in the mail. Plus there's some shirt raffles a couple times a month that you can do as well. Patreon.com/talkinggiants.
I hate that we're delaying this, but I got to share the story because it's the off season. It's June, so we can do this. I had my first nasty interaction with a Patreon member.
Nasty?
Like he got nasty.
Did you take a little too long sending the stickers in the mail?
Well, no. Here was the thing: is I thought I did. So he said the stickers didn't come. Whatever,
Sure.
you know. And hey, sometimes they get lost in the mail. Maybe I forget. Usually, if they get messed up in the mail, they return it to me. So he's like, I canceled my thing. He's like, or he's like, I didn't get them, and I was like, okay, I'll send some more. And this was during the draft, you know. So like, I put out, hey, I'm not going to send any during the draft when I get back.
Yeah.
And then so 2 days after I get home from the draft, he said, hey, you know, I didn't join for stickers, but when you ignore your fans, that's what you get. And I was like, hey man, sorry if there's miscommunication. I sent it for the second time. I sent it, but I sent it a day ago. Sorry if there's any miscommunication. He's like, well, I'm gonna send them back, and I was like, no, man, you paid for 2 months. Sorry about that. All love. And then he's like, still didn't get these stickers, you virgins. Like got all hot and bothered. I was like, hey man, I sent them twice. Sorry, you know. So something on your end, you know, and just
if you're gonna call us something, I think calling us virgins is the nicest but also most offensive thing you could do without being totally rude.
It's just a weird thing to say to a football podcast.
I've never been called a virgin.
And then
through the internet
I just basically said I was like, hey man, I sent them twice. This is something on your end, but I'm so happy I have your $20.
What did I do? I got lumped into being a virgin.
And then he said something else, and I just responded, I love you.
You're the virgin.
Yeah.
You virgin?
I am. I'm saving myself.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this episode. Giants areas for improvement. People do not care about that story, but I just thought it was funny. This is the first time someone there's been people who have canceled, right? But it's like someone who
you should have got to the virgin part more quickly there.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure. I sent them twice, you know, because there has been times where it's like you don't send them for a week a little bit late, and I'll usually make a post if they're late, and then. But if you say, hey, I didn't get them, and because I will not mess. There's a message I sent that says got you. I will not send that message got you until they're in an envelope with a stamp. Like it's a rule. I will not respond to a message saying got you until those stickers are in an envelope with a. So if I do that twice, that's on your end. All right.
Comment you virgins on YouTube.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's spam the chat. Giants episode, areas improvement. So what should we start with, offense or defense? Should we start with the offense, get people sucked in, talking about
offense
explosive
is
plays?
Sexy, yeah.
All right, so we all know that the Giants were bad at creating explosive plays on offense, especially in the passing game this year. They were actually, I think, a fairly explosive running game.
They were.
Daniel Jones had the second lowest 20-plus yard attempt rate in the NFL. If you just doubled his rate, you know, that would put him at 26, tied with Justin Herbert if they doubled his rate.
That's
the distance between him at 35th and the guy at 34th is the difference between 34th and 15th. So it wasn't just second lowest with only Matt Ryan lowered by, you know, a slim margin. Like I said, the difference between 15th and 22nd is only a slim margin. But it's actually like a really wide distance. And then not even just deep throws, the average depth of target was last in the NFL at 6.5. So dead last in that. So obviously they didn't push the ball down the field. Now there's numerous reasons for that. The wide receiver room, offensive line. How do they get better at this, right? And I don't think it's as simple as just adding weapons. And I want to break it down, Justin, on versus zone and versus man. And I just want to say you're welcome for me picking this because people, If you said they got to get better explosive plays, I think people would have rolled their eyes. Like, yeah, you've been saying this for 3 years, Justin.
Well, yeah, and that's why I'm glad that you're going at this from this angle, for sure.
So, versus zone. One of the biggest reasons I think that they are not able to create explosive plays versus zone, it's more so than any other player on this team, more so than the wide receiver core, more so than Daniel Jones, is the offensive line. Because it's a lot hard to create explosive plays versus zone coverage, right? Because defenses are trying to keep everything in front of you, especially when they're playing quarters and too high zone coverages. And, cover 3 zone usually looks like man coverage for the most part anyways. And it's just because to get explosive plays versus zone, you have to put defenders in conflict. And that takes a lot longer than one guy just beating his man versus man coverage, which we'll talk about. And I think Evan Neal and Tyree Phillips were the main reason for that. Evan Neal and Tyree Phillips were 3rd and 4th worst in the NFL in pass blocking efficiency for guys who played only right tackle. 3rd and 4th worst.
Not bad.
The only 2 worst at right tackle were Cornelius Lucas for the Commanders and the Chargers' backup. Their 4th offensive tackle after they lost Slater and then the other guy. This guy only played 6 games, but he was worse.
I think we've had right tackle play that has set such a low bar over the last couple of years that when Tyree Phillips came in, it didn't seem that bad in comparison to, no offense, Evan Neal and then Nate Solder, right? Like Tyree Phillips didn't even seem that bad in comparison to those guys.
Yeah, and so this pass blocking efficiency number is not pass blocking PFF grade, because I will never use a PFF grade to make mine. It is from the PFF website, but it's measuring pressures, hits, and sacks allowed on a per snap basis, and then being a little more weighted for sacks. And Evan Neal's number, 94.6 on all pass sets, and then 90.3 on true pass sets. I want to go through the last 3 right tackles to show you how bad that was. Solder, 96.1 and 93.3, higher. Fleming, 96.1 and 93.4, higher. Mike Remmers, 95.9 and 93.2. I mean, out of the last 4 years, I think Mike Remmers has been the Giants' best right tackle that they've had. So Evan Neal, that's where it's like, where can we get better at this and like have some real hope in this? It's Evan Neal. Evan Neal has to grow for them to become a more explosive play offense versus zone coverages. Not necessarily for versus man coverages. I think the addition of the receivers add on there. But they worked the quick game to resolve this. So that's why average depth of target is so low. Like they had to work the quick game to do this issue. If they were trying to work downfield concepts, it would have turned into more sacks. And guess what? They gave up a lot of sacks as well. And if there is improvement of Evan Neal, and obviously the other offensive linemen outside of Andrew Thomas need improvement, deep concepts that put defenders in conflict. That is how you beat zone coverages for explosive plays, is by putting defenders in conflict and having them either making wrong decisions or just, hey, a guy can't cover 2 guys in one area and a safety ends up being put in the wrong spot. There was concepts that I know Brian Dable and Mike Kafka love, like that these guys use a lot, and more so Brian Dable in Buffalo. That concepts they love, concepts we were expecting to see, that just were not in the playbook. They were thrown out of the playbook, like concepts like Mills, which I think they scored like 2 or 3 touchdowns in that famous Bills-Chiefs playoff game in there. The Darius Slayton, touchdown drop versus the Commanders, that was that concept. Wave, they tried to run towards the start of the year. They basically, took it out of the playbook and just became a team that ran more mesh and stuff like that. So they just totally threw concepts out there. So that's why, to me, Evan Neal, when we talk about Evan Neal being so important for the offense, this is why. Because it allows you to do so. If he can be good, it allows you to try so much more things on offense that where if he ended up being a bust, it just really hampers the offense from progressing and doing things they want to do.
Yeah. And they have the personnel to... the personnel on the skill position side would not be the thing that would hold them back this year. It would be offensive line, Evan Neal, right side of the offensive line. So that's the main difference heading into this year.
Yeah, and I wrote down the additions of Waller and Campbell that allows you to turn short plays into explosives. It doesn't necessarily change the average depth of target, but it just creates a more explosive offense.
Waller should be able to help that a little bit.
Well, I'm just talking about versus zone, like quick little throws versus zone. Waller and Campbell can take those and turn them into big plays where Daniel Bellinger and Richie James really weren't doing that.
Yeah. Well, Waller's just a better route runner. And this even goes back to, all the tight ends that we've had in the past, probably since freaking Jeremy Shockey, that Waller's just a better route runner where, what you're expecting Daniel Bellinger to do and, some tight ends in the past is just be this check down like flat guy, whereas Waller's not going to be that. So there's a very big difference between throwing the ball, even if it's 5 to 7 yards down the field, and having an average depth of target like that in a given game versus -1 to 1 yard. That's a big difference in how it shows up in a stat sheet. So
yeah, so and Waller helps in all levels, especially versus man coverage when you're going to face that. And then for Daniel Jones' perspective versus zone, we've talked about it a lot. The whole shots on the sideline. When you're running a 2-man route and you've got a defender trying to play 2 players and he's playing more towards the flat, you got to pull the trigger and hit those whole shots on the sideline. Those are 18 to 25 yard plays that have that. Those were really the only plays that Daniel Jones left on the field. There's probably 5 to 8 whole shots on the sideline. There's like 2 deep passes, like a double move versus the Seahawks, and maybe one other throw, but those whole shots are where it's like you consistent, like, hey man, they just did not pull the trigger on these.
Trivia question. Giants had 4 passing touchdowns of 20 plus yards this year. Who were the players? When did they come?
So not air yards, but just passing touchdowns of 20 plus yards?
Yes.
So Sterling Shepard week 1 versus the Titans.
Yes, 1.
Darius Slayton versus the Jags.
Yes, 2.
Darius Slayton versus the Texans.
Yes, 3. One more. This is one that could get you.
I don't think it was I don't think the Bellinger versus the Panthers was over 20 yards. Or Bellinger.
You're going to kick yourself.
Richie, Marcus. Kenny Golladay.
There you go. Good job. I was like, you're going to kick yourself.
You're going to kick yourself. Give it to me. Kenny Golladay. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so those are the 4. Those are right there. Those are the 4 passing touchdowns of 20 plus yards from this year. So that's week 1. That's the Texans game, which thank God for that touchdown, because that's the difference. That's literally the difference between it being 24-16 or 17-16 or whatever, 16-16. And then the Jaguars game. So very much centered towards the early part of the season. Can I tell you why? I don't want to talk about this too much more, but
I'm still going to talk about it versus man coverage and stuff.
Oh yeah,
too.
Talk about man coverage before I come in with. I don't have that many stats with this because everybody knows, but there's one stat I want to talk about.
Versus man coverage, it's a lot more simple. This is where the additions in the wide receiver and tight end room matter the most. It just doesn't take a ton of protection for a guy for Darren Waller, for Slayton, for Jalen Hyatt, depending on how he develops, to create a big play versus man coverage. And when they were on the field together last year, you just had to shade the safety over to Darius Slayton when you played man coverage. The Giants weren't an inherently aggressive team. You for the most part, you're pulling them away from taking that shot there. But guess what? Now when you have Jalen Hyatt on one side, when you have Darren Waller on a crosser or any type of route, those guys can win and get separation on man coverage. And now teams are going to have to show you respected. Like the Giants had the 4th highest, Daniel Jones had the 4th highest play action completion percentage last year, but was 33rd in yards per attempt. Not average depth of target, just yards per attempt, which the higher your completion percentage, the higher your yards of attempt are going to be. Big reason for that is when they ran that play action, is basically just cover Darius Slayton. Cover Darius Slayton, and they might be able to get a check down or whatever, but they're not going to, we never threw the post on those, to Marcus Johnson or anybody. So like Hodgins and Isaiah Hodgins are still going to play, but Isaiah Hodgins, Daniel Bellinger, and James, they're just not going to create big plays or command respect when teams are playing man coverage. So it's a lot more simple versus man coverage. Is hey, you have to respect this team, and you have to have more than one guy, and it'll come down to Daniel Jones finding the guys that are going to win versus man and pulling the trigger on those throws.
Yeah, for sure. The stat that I look at every single year, and I do it for every single season, is I look at the records of teams based on where they finish in explosive pass play rate. So I look at the top 10 teams, the middle 12 teams, and the bottom 10 teams. What are their records based on their explosive pass play ranking? And what I added a little nuance to it this year. I had a little nuance of I looked at it solely from game neutral situation when the margin of the game is between 0 to 14 points. I think garbage time stats, I hate looking at garbage time stats, and especially, being a Giants fan the last couple of years, we've had to really, you got to look between the weeds of, looking at garbage time and non-garbage time. So, the top 10 teams, or we'll start off with the bottom 10. The bottom 10 teams in explosive pass play rankings this past year finished with a record of 59, 107, and 4, 35.4% win rate. The middle 12 were 97 and 107, 47.55%. The top 10 teams that produce explosive pass plays at the highest rate, 113 and 55. That's a 67.2% winning percentage. Bobby, as the years have gone on, I love looking at stats. I've looked at a shit ton of stats. I have not found a stat that has been more associated with wins and losses, especially over a long-term period. Maybe not a single game, but over a season-long period than explosive pass plays and explosive plays in general. If you're a team that can stop an explosive play, and if you're a team that can produce an explosive play, you are going to likely be a winning football team. And that is something that this Giants team has just missed every single year, basically since 2015.
Yeah, really. You look at 2019, and that offense wasn't that explosive, but it feels like the most explosive offense ever.
They were ranked 24th in explosive pass play rate, and we remember that year fondly because there were big plays and in some big moments. But then you really pull the curtain back, and it's like, this is still bad, but it's what we had. It's what we have.
Yeah, it just feels like 3 times what we've seen the last couple of years.
Because it is.
Yeah. Justin, before you get to your area for improvement on offense, hit it out of the park this baseball season with DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers can place a $5 bet and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can take a shot at bigger payouts with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up with code WORLD. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code WORLD only on DraftKings Sportsbook. Do you think the Heat have a chance to win the NBA Finals? It's tied 1-1 right now.
Yes, I think they do.
I'm trying to not get too lost on the sauce at Game 2, but I'm still going to just stick with my prediction of Nuggets in 6, but I'm rooting for the Heat. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER in Massachusetts. Call 800-327-5050 or visit Gambling Helpline. helplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus in most eligible states, but age vary by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Opt-in and 10 plus leg room for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com/baseball terms. And speeding.
Sure.
I'll be honest, I miss when we could just say, see the show notes.
Yeah.
Can we go back to that, government?
Yeah, government. Can we go back to
Chris, we need to talk to Anatana. He works in the government now. We need to get him on top of that. I should have brought that up with him.
All the state secrets. Doug Analytics. This doesn't always happen like this, but the Chiefs and the Eagles were number 1 and number 2 in explosive pass play, right?
Bam.
Doesn't always happen like that.
And guess what? The Chiefs didn't even have, I think Mahomes was 26th or 27th in 20-plus yard air throw. So it wasn't even like they were just bombing it up. They were just able to create explosive pass plays.
Yeah. yak is very, very important, especially in the league where if they're trending more towards too high safeties and they don't want you to throw it deep, well, then you got to have the horses underneath that can break tackles, and that's why speed is so important. Not only just to stretch the field, but to break tackles and then get the yards after the catch too. That's very, very important.
Get the horses in the bag.
You got the horses in the bag. I'm going to be talking about getting off to faster starts because Mike Kafka recently talked about getting off to faster starts. So obviously the Giants as a team got off to a faster start, but in the words of Mike Kafka, but as an offense specifically, I think we can get off to a better start there. That was a big-time study for us as a group and as a staff. When we went and talked with the players throughout the offseason program phases here, that's been a huge emphasis. And what he's talking about is getting off to a faster start in the actual game and in an actual football game. The Giants in the first and second quarter, but specifically I'm going to look at the first quarter, they were a bad football team. It was a joke throughout the year that the Giants were a second half team. They were very strong in the second half, but what that also comes with is they were a bad first half team. So these are the Giants offense first quarter stats. EPA per play, they were 29th. The total number of plays run, they were tied for 30th. Sacks, they were tied for 31st. Punts, they were tied for 29th. First down rate, 30th, and then total touchdowns, tied for 29th. The Giants had the worst point differential in the league after the first quarter at minus 38. As a result, I think this is, this thing, they kind of work hand in hand. The offense had a slow start. The defense also had an EPA per play at 29th as well. Out of QBs with a minimum of 75 plays in the first quarter, Jones was 26th in EPA per play, 19th in CPOE. So I think a main priority for the Giants this year, a main area improvement, is just getting off to, in general, a faster start, putting more points up on the board, putting more explosive plays up on the board early on. That kind of sets you up for success, so you're not constantly playing from behind, and operating from an area of kind of weakness.
With this, it's like I would love to be in that room to see what they are identifying to get to there, right? Because it's not pass run ratio. It's not like they were trying to freaking feed the, they were force feeding Saquon. In fact, it was the opposite, where they actually ran the ball more. They had a higher run to pass ratio in quarters 2 through 4 compared to the first quarter.
Yeah, and we talked about that a ton as the Giants were making these multi-score comebacks. Like I think of the Ravens game, I think of the Jaguars game, if I'm remembering correctly. These kind of multi-score comebacks that they had late in games, they were running the ball more than they were passing, which is usually backwards. If you're down by
Titans was definitely one of those games.
Yeah, and that's explosive Saquon Barkley plays too, which I'll take explosive plays no matter how they come, right? It's just easier to produce plays of 20 plus yards versus rushing plays of 20 plus yards. But they were doing it backwards. The Giants were operating it backwards, where if you're down by multiple scores, you're throwing the ball more. The Giants were like a balanced 50-50 football team while they were down in the second half, which is crazy stuff.
Yeah, and when they would like that Jags game, remember like they got to the fourth quarter, like they got the lead early in the fourth quarter and they just stopped throwing the ball.
Yeah.
They just and that was the week that Daniel Jones won NFC Player of the Week, and obviously Daniel Jones has a part of that rushing. I mean, he had over 100 yards in that game. The Titans one was a game where it's like it was all Saquon.
Listen, ideally, like I love running the ball when you have a lead, and especially if you can run it well when you have a lead. That's how you win in the NFL. It's not just throw. I think a lot of people, because I specifically talk about first down, for early down pass frequency and throwing the ball on first down. People just think that I just maybe want to throw the ball 40 times a game. No, I want to get the lead. I want to get a lead early in the game, and I want to be efficient on early downs by throwing the ball and having an average depth of target that's balanced, that requires my skill position players to get yards after the catch. And then by the time we get to the second half and we have that 7-10 point lead, dare I say maybe a little bit more, 4-point lead, that's one score, right? I want to run the ball, and that's where I want my offensive lineman to start leaning on dudes. And when you get fatigued, when you get tired, I believe in all that stuff. So I want this Giants team to be more balanced this year, and I think the strengths of this team can still be running the ball, except let's use the first 3 quarters, maybe specifically the first half, on getting that lead, and then we're operating from a position of strength.
So that's where I'm like, what are they identifying as that way to start faster? And I hate to tie it back into my thing, but I do think it is create explosives. Like Gary Slayton was talking to the media, and he's like, "Hey, like yeah, there's definitely a more emphasis on creating big plays in this, right? Like, and I think that's where the additions of Darren Waller, it kind of tied, Darren Waller, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt. That's where they come in. Evan Neal improving, where you're not giving up the most sacks in the first quarter in the NFL. Like that's huge. So,
I have a new phrase: start fast, finish slow. I want to start fast. I want to throw the ball. I want to produce explosive plays. I want to score points, and I want to finish slow by taking knees to end the game. That's what I want.
Bam! I like it. Defensively.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first?
Do you want to read an ad?
Oh,
How many do we have?
What do I have?
How many ads do we have?
We have 3.
Then let's do an ad.
Okay, let's do an ad. All right, before we go to defensive, my offensive one was short. I got it. I got mine short, sweet, and to the point. You want to know what also is sweet? HelloFresh. It's freshness. And it says hello when it comes to your door. That's right, because somebody actually delivers it. They say, hello, how are you? And I say, I'm good, because I have HelloFresh now. This summer, HelloFresh is here to take the work out of eating well. Reach your goals with delicious, calorie-smart, and protein-smart lunch and dinner options, plus new vegan recipes, too. Whoa, hello. HelloFresh, get it? HelloFresh's seasonal ingredients are picked at peak ripeness and travel from the farm to your doorstep in less than 7 days for fresh flavor in every bite. Now, I gotta admit, box is heavy because I'll tell you what, it's like insulated, so all the ingredients stay fresh in it, and there's so much stuff in it that it could get you through literally your entire week. You don't gotta worry. HelloFresh delivers mouthwatering chef-crafted recipes and fresh ingredients to your door so you can spend less time meal planning and prepping. With 40 recipes and over 100 seasonal and convenience items to choose from each week, you'll always find meals everyone will enjoy at the table. Go to HelloFresh.com/World16. That's right, and use code WORLD16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/World16 and start using America's #1 meal kit today. You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. All right, defensively, I wanted to go back and watch this, and I watched a few games of film when the Giants got gassed by this. And it is stopping the run versus gap scheme, which is guys pulling, changing gaps. When you hear gap scheme, it basically means just like guys pulling, right? Where zone is just, hey, you're all stepping in one unison. You have split zone, which I think split zone has some similarities to gap, but it still is zone. So I actually went and looked at teams. I went and looked at teams on how much do they run gap for zone. On teams that ran over 50% gap than zone, which is not very many teams. Only six games they played this year like that. Teams average 160 rushing yards per game, 5.6 yards per carry. On teams that ran over 40% gap, which is a high amount, there's 8 games. 167 yards per game, so 7 yards more, 5.6 yards per carry, so the same amount of yards per carry. But I put the disclaimer in there because 3 of those games were against what team, Justin? The Eagles. And when the Eagles played the Giants, they became a gap running team. Like, they basically only ran gap runs.
Was the Lions the other one?
There's 5 other games like that. In that. But I think the Lions were in one of these categories. I think they might have been over 50% actually, or over. Anyways, but the Lions, or the Eagles were 3 of those games. So the Eagles, because they ran so much gap, they had 218 yards per game, 6 yards per carry. The other 5 games, 136 yards per game, 4.9 yards per carry. And then teams that had less than 40% amount of gap runs for their season, 101 yards per game, so that's a difference of 59 yards and 4.2 yards per carry. So, I mean, a huge, huge difference. And Justin, I went to identify why it was this bad. We actually talked about it with Snyder, and I was like, let me go back and rewatch this stuff and identify all the reasons and what was the main reason. It started with linebacker play, right? It wasn't only linebacker play, but it started with linebacker play, and Jalen Smith in particular. Like, being reminded how bad this guy was at linebacker for the New York Giants. One, Jalen Smith just never sniffed out a play versus these gaps. You know, it's one thing to have a guy who's not the best, but he can at least sniff out a play here or there and make some plays, which will tie into what yours. Jalen Smith never did that versus gap type runs. Never sniffed a play. Always late. So he was late reading, which means he would stay at depth, which would mean he would get washed up in blocks. He could never, when he was late, recover and scrape over the top. Never. And then whenever he did read something halfway decent, never read anything great, but just read it all correctly, he wasn't able to shed those blocks. And honestly, most times not only did he get not able to shed the blocks would dominate him. So Jalen Smith in particular. But all linebackers were thrown off by this the most. Misdirection, which comes with these gap schemes, which is those counter runs, right? Which the Eagles ran to death on the Giants, those counter runs. Also using a fullback in misdirection. The Lions got a big chunk play to start the game doing that. So the misdirection threw them off. Also, scheme-wise, when they were facing that split zone, which is not gap, but still there's a little bit of difference in there. There was kind of some funky backside linebacker run fits that they did. Also, the linebackers didn't have a lot of trust because the edge gap integrity wasn't always great. This is where it needs to improve, man. Bobby Okereke, one, need to be better shedding blocks, play quicker. It looked like our linebackers did not study film. It really looked like they did not study film and look at running back tendencies and what the other team tried to run, because they were always playing from behind in this. So when they were playing light boxes, running backs would destroy them. They'd be like, all right, I'll just cut here, get him jumping in this gap, and then cut off. Cut off of that. So you really got to be a freaking film nerd and know what the other team is doing, the way that Blake Martinez did for the Giants in 2020. You got to know what these running backs' tendencies are and obviously what they're running. So I'm not saying the last team didn't watch film, but they didn't put them ahead of the place, Like where Ray Lewis, was Ray Lewis just a great freaking athlete and stuff, but Ray Lewis knew what the other team was going to run. That was why he was so great. So we need Okereke and group to be those guys. Like the running backs just flat out played them too often. Other things that led them to being weak in this. The third defensive lineman almost always got washed out of place, especially when Nick Williams went down with the injury. And here's where I'm going to challenge, we got better players. Kayvon Thibodeau, I need you to become a better edge setter. Like, one, there was just bad edge setting, which, when you're playing that gap teams, what is the best way to stop a gap run team? Because it is hard on the linebackers. The best way is to set a damn good edge. Because guess what? Wherever that guard on the backside is pulling to, there's nowhere for them to go into because that edge just got squeezed down and there's nowhere for that big old man to run through, right? And to me, it was Kayvon was inconsistent with this. There were times, and whenever Kayvon did set a really good edge, it would be a run stop versus these gap runs. It was like the only times they had run stops versus these gap runs were when Dex would just make a totally outstanding play, or when Kayvon would set a really good edge on the front side. So Kayvon has to really get better at being a more consistent edge setter, squeezing those gaps down, because that's going to make their life a whole lot easier for these linebackers, for the Bobby Okereke, because Bobby Okereke is not. He's not the best linebacker in the NFL who's going to make everyone else look a ton better. He's a good linebacker, not a great one. And Jihad Ward, Jihad Ward's a good edge setter, but Jihad Ward has speed issues. So whenever teams would bounce, they were able to beat him to the perimeter. They weren't able to beat Kayvon Thibodeau to the perimeter. They were able to beat him to the perimeter, bounce those plays, and create big plays. And then Azeez Ojulari, I don't know if he can become a great edge setter. I think his ceiling is kind of what Kayvon was last year's net. So Kayvon Thibodeau, that is a challenge I have for him. Obviously we want to see more pass rush production, but I want to see him become a more dominant edge setter on a down in, down out basis. Because you see flashes of it. You really do see flashes of it being really good, but you just don't see the consistency enough of it. Getting rid of Jalen Smith and adding Okereke was vital. It's going to make a huge difference. But to where they can become maybe even a good run defense, dare I say it, Kayvon Thibodeau is a huge part of that.
Wink Martindale said that he wanted Kayvon Thibodeau to add more strength and add maybe a little bit more weight, kind of like in his lower half and his core. And I think that's kind of like where it starts, right? And maybe
absolutely. It generates from the legs.
Yeah, maybe not even necessarily being like a bull rusher, with pass pro, but also setting an edge. We know Azeez Ojulari is continuing to bulk up, and he keeps on bulking up. Like, dude, I know the pre-draft eval was that you're a little light, but take it easy. We gotta get you on the field, and who knows if that's tied to him being healthy or what. But so one observation and one question for you, but both kind of based on stats. One. All these things you're saying, I think what it ends up being in a stats way, how it manifests itself in stats is the Giants on first and second down, EPA per play on defense were the worst defense in the National Football League. They were the worst by far, and I think it manifests itself as that they just could not stop the run. And there were so often throughout, especially this was throughout the early portion of the year, Bobby. I was waiting. I'm like, look at how many third and shorts offenses are getting because they're able to run the ball. They're able to run the ball on running downs, first and second down. Look at all these third and shorts. But the Giants were the third best defense in the National Football League on third down. Their ability to, Wink Martindale to scheme something up on third down, the ability to maybe generate some pressure, maybe deflect a pass, and the secondary kind of holding up, that was there. And the Giants got off the field when they needed to get off the field. But how teams were able to sustain drives is by not being able to stop the run and struggling with all the things that you talked about. So this defense will take a huge leap if they are not the worst first and second down defense in the National Football League this year for sure. But that kind of transitions into my overall theme, which, do you have anything else?
No, it's just, it's that is an area where Wink said, hey, we need to improve, right? Yeah. Like in that interview a couple weeks ago.
Because that's not even necessarily something schematic that you're talking about. That's kind of like Jimmy's and Joe's. And can we have edge rushers that can set an edge? And can we have linebackers that at least can attempt to sniff something out? I don't even think it's anything.
Damn DBs on the field all the time, too, matters with it, too.
Yeah, but, in a pet, are you really going to hold Wink? I don't think that's a Wink thing, though. That's the scheme.
No, but I'm saying now that we have some linebackers, like
right,
Bobby Okereke should never step off the field. Yeah. Never.
You could see more Research Rick, I think, recently tweeted about this. You still could see more 5 defensive lineman sets this year, now that they actually have the more defensive linemen on the team. So
that's what Wink wants to do, but once Nick Williams down, it's just they didn't have those 3 interior defensive linemen, and then obviously we're considering the edge players as down linemen. Right. Like those 5, like Wink likes to operate out of 5-man fronts, but he just didn't have, again, that's why I said, like, the third defensive lineman was always a disadvantage, especially so when Nick Williams went down, and that's why, like, hey, they were good stopping zone run teams because they had Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, and the reads are a lot more defined for the linebackers and everyone else. It's just their linebacker play was so bad, and their edge defenders weren't good. Like Kayvon was solid. He was inconsistent. Azeez was not a great edge setter, but he didn't play much. O'Shane was a bad edge setter. And Jahad Ward sets a good edge, but he doesn't have the athleticism to make plays.
Oh, here's my second thing, and this is a question. Did you find that there was ever a left versus right side trend that you picked up on, one being better than the other, or no?
No, not to say that it's not there, but I wasn't looking for it.
Football Outsiders, this is something that I like to look at. I like to look at directional defensive line stats. Football Outsiders has the Giants' run defense going towards the left side, being one of the worst in the league. And then when going to the right side, it's like average. Up the middle and guard, it was their average line ranking was 31st, so it was bad. But going towards the right side, it was average. So I wonder, if there's anything there, if there's...
It could be a Jahad Ward stat.
Jahad Ward, a linebacker that maybe shades to one side.
I noticed the teams didn't run towards Jahad Ward too often either. It was kind of like, let's go after the Kayvon, Azeez, O'Shane side.
We actually can check that. PFF lists specifically what side of the line each player lines up on, so maybe we'll circle back with that at some point. My second area of improvement: become more disruptive. No shit Sherlock, but last year's defense was not necessarily the defense that we signed up for with Wink Martindale. Yes, they blitzed a ton. Felt like they could have blitzed more, which Wink Martindale is a psychopath. Even though they led the league in blitz rate, still felt like they left a ton on the table because of, certain injuries that they had, certain deficiencies that the defense had, especially when when secondary players start going down, you got to help the secondary guys out a little bit more. I want this defense to become more disruptive. And on kind of a related but maybe unrelated note, maybe not shoot themselves in the foot so often. I didn't remember this being a problem like just with my eye test. Did you know that the Giants defense, they were second in the league in defensive penalties, and they allowed the third most first downs allowed via a penalty? Did not know that, but that would be a stat that would be nice to improve on, this upcoming year. Don't give an opposing offenses first downs based off of penalties. The Giants, though, in terms of becoming more disruptive, they were 22nd in adjusted sack rate via Football Outsiders, which looks at sack rates, not just raw sack numbers. And also there's sacks on a 3rd and 5 mean a lot more than a 3rd and 15. So it's able to measure that. They were 22nd in adjusted sack rate. They were 13th in sacks overall, 6th in pressure rate, and 8th in QB hits. So that's good. That's good. Now I thought I had a theory that, the fact that we were 13th in sacks, 22nd in adjusted sack rate, but we were 6th in pressures and 8th in QB hits, which is good. I thought that, maybe teams are getting rid of the ball quicker, or maybe quarterbacks are scrambling extra long because they're avoiding pressure. I didn't find, when looking at the time to throw stats from each individual quarterback, I didn't find there to be a significant trend, but that is something that's there. But I still want more sacks this year overall from this Wink Martindale defense, and that involves Ezekiel Ojulari being healthy, Kayvon Thibodeau taking that step up, Leonard Williams, get healthy, get more sacks, man. You're being paid like a top interior defensive lineman. Dex, continue to do the things that you're doing. Continuing to be more disruptive. 22nd in tackles for loss. Not good. Not great. 26th in turnovers per drive, forced. 26th in turnovers per drive, forced. 31st in interception rate. I think all these things, the penalties, getting more pressure on the quarterback, sacking the quarterback more, causing more negative plays, including turnovers, it will help a defense that was 19th in points per drive last year and 25th in yards per drive. They were very good on third down, and they were very, very good in the red zone. So kind of remember the areas that Patrick Graham's defense was best in? Especially in the red zone and locking down in the red zone. This Wink Martindale defense was a little bit last year bending but not breaking. Didn't allow a lot of touchdowns, but still 19th in points per drive. Becoming more disruptive and getting back to the core of what Wink Martindale wants to do, along with seeing a step in Kayvon Thibodeau, along with seeing a healthy Azeez Ojulari, that will make this defense more disruptive, and I think it won't just make this defense above average, I think it could make it a top 10 unit.
Yeah, so with the interception portion of it, because it's how do you
It's going to get better. It has to.
But I'm trying to think of the paths of getting better besides the fact that it's you can't have a year like that again. Right. Is because you get Banks, who's not an interception guy. I think he had one. He had two because he had one his freshman year, but two career interceptions in his career. I just said 2 career interceptions in his career. Adoree Jackson, not an interception guy, which doesn't mean bad corner, it just means they don't get interceptions. A second safety after McKinney, who was we don't even know who's going to be rolling out there. I think the answer to it is getting teams in 3rd and long, which we talked about with the first and second down issues.
Which we didn't do.
Which is that's when mistakes happen, is on 3rd, not even 3rd and long, just 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Those are when you're going to get those mistakes to happen. And, when you're not a team that's, when you can't run the ball well on a team, that's when you're going to start maybe forcing things a little bit. When you can just, especially when the Eagles played us, it was man, this is so easy for them. It's they just run the ball, take what you give them the passing game.
And they just didn't face third down. That was also the issue. They just never faced third down. They avoid it, and that's what the best teams do. And when you get I think Wink Martindale, when you get him into that 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 plus situation, that's where he starts licking his chops, being like, even if I'm only going to bring 4 or 5 here, I'm going to show like I'm bringing 7, or I'm going to show like I'm bringing 8. And I'm going to, all these guys, disguise everything, have guys running around pre-snap. That's when he starts licking his chops, kind of like we saw, the game-winning play that we had against Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, where McKinney had that pass deflection. So that's where I feel like Wink Martindale is at his best, when his defense can get to those kind of like 3rd and long situations.
Last year, Julian Love and Dane Belton led the Giants in interceptions with 2. Julian Love gone. Belton, we don't know if he's going to start. Who leads the New York Giants in interceptions in 2023?
I think Dane Belton can.
So Belton will be your answer?
Belton would be my answer.
Belton would make sense because he has versatility. You can put him in some man coverage. I'm going to throw this out there. I know this guy didn't get a ton in college. What about Cordell Flott?
Yeah, the story of Cordell Flott continues.
He's going to be playing the slot. But he has outside versatility.
Yeah, it continues to evolve since, Ryan Dunley, and I kind of feel bad for Ryan because he came on the show and he said, yeah, he's likely to play the outside. Somebody in the Giants building, there's some people in the Giants building that believe he plays on the outside, and now they're kind of, experimenting him out there in the slot. So, he
almost had that interception versus the Vikings in the regular season game, had a really nice play towards the end of the game. Like, I just see him having maybe the best ability to get his hands on the ball consistently. And again, Adore is not an interception guy. Banks, I don't see that happening for him this year.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would like it for it to be McKinney. Like the goal is for it to be McKinney, but he coming off of a year where he had 0.
In my brain, when I think of like contested catches in 2022 in the Giants defense, I think of Darnay Holmes allowing contested catches and just being like, damn, like you're there, man, but you're just not big and you're not good in man coverage. I think a bigger slot corner, a la a Cordell Flott, if he is going to play in that role, if we're having those contested catch opportunities where Cordell Flott can make a play on a football, that's where I can possibly see him coming down with some interceptions.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel the same way. Where it's like, hey, with Flott in the slot, we shouldn't be. Hopefully, we're not getting picked on there where we were last year. And he's long, rangy. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to be different, but that would be my guess. McKinney is the one that should lead it, but I'm gonna say the guy. Do we have anything else that we need to talk about?
We got to talk about BetterHelp.
BetterHelp. Better talk about BetterHelp.
You better get your help because this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's help that's better than the other helps out there, which that's better. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you. Bobby Skinner, I need a monkey, $1 million, and a ride on a rocket ship.
I need a better run defense.
But Bobby, you're worried about a better run defense. I need you to take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. When we spend all of our time giving, when we spend all of our time getting anxious and watching this Giants run defense, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. And therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. And it's a better option than the other helps out there. Like I said, just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/TalkinGiants today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/TalkinGiants. You'll be glad you did.
I need to know what we're gonna do for Friday's pod.
What are we gonna do for Friday's pod? Areas of improvement. I have been waiting since 2020 to go back.
Don't say it. Because we are due. We're due, but don't say it.
To go back to the Biggest Fears episode with Danny King, which
I thought you were going to say someone gets arrested.
No, which you said the Biggest Fears episode was the worst Talking Giants episode in Talking Giants history, which I disagree with. Danny King and I did a great job. Danny King, one of Danny King's worst fears of that season was Aldrich Rosas would not be a good field goal kicker. Lo and behold, he got arrested. So Danny King was right. One of his worst fears was acknowledged. But yeah, you know what? We are due for somebody to get arrested.
We not only did we have 2 arrests in 2020 offseason, 2 like insane story arrests. Like the DeAndre Baker overshadowed the Aldrich Rosas one, where it's like, wait, he was 100 miles per hour, bloodied up, barefoot, and they didn't give him a DUI? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Who would it be? Who would it be to get arrested?
Last time we did this, someone tweeted at the player like, "You guys are right. This guy could get arrested."
This is the.
Even though it was playful, like we playfully said, it'd be Darius Slayton because Slayton he wouldn't get arrested for like being doing something really bad. He's just he likes fast cars, so he'd just be like, he did 100 and a 55, and they decided to cuff him for that.
Now Darius Slayton would get arrested for like being too kind.
Yes.
That's what you can't be here helping this person. Get out of here. And then they take him away.
Likely to be arrested.
Nope, I don't want to. I teased it.
I don't want to do it because every answer is a bad answer.
I know it's smart, tough, dependable. That's
Daniel Jones. You see that picture of him holding the gun?
It's true. Yeah, he was with an extended mag too.
Yeah. So. All right, that's an episode. We will see you guys on Friday. On Friday you'll know what we're going to talk about, and it's going to be good. I'm trying to hold off mailbag because we only do 1 mailbag a month in the off season.
It is a new month.
It is a new month, so we could be a mailbag, but I'm trying to hold off on the mailbag. It's nice to save that. And then by end of the month, guess what? We have 2024 draft preview.
Wow, with the grump.
Yeah, so excited for that. All right, we'll see you guys Friday. Until then, let's go Big Blue.